Welcome back to the Gaming Stan Show. As always, I'm your host, Steve McAllister. When Sarah McCarthy joined the Responsible Gambling Council as its new Chief Executive Officer in January, it was proverbial hit the ground running scenario for the former Rick Hansen Foundation head of strategy. More recently, that's involved the RGC's annual Discovery Conference and the Council's participation in a responsible gaming or gambling policy rendezvous at the G7 Canada Brain Economy Summit in Cairns, Alberta, a few days before the start of the Canadian Gaming Summit. So it's rather perfect timing for Sarah to make her Gaming News Canada show debut. And we also welcome back to the show Elaine MacDougall, the RGC's Senior Vice President of Strategy and Programs. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And Elaine, before we get going, congratulations on your promotion and your new title. I do want to talk about it a bit later, but I want to make sure I didn't forget to say congratulations.
Thank you, Steve.
Hey, I want to start, Sarah, you're filling pretty big shoes. Shelley White was 8 year tenure CEO of the Responsible Gambling Council. Left after 8 years. You came in January. How's the transition been for you so far?
Yeah, well, just a note to that, Shelley really did leave the organization in such a good place. And I feel very gracious for being able to move into an organization that was so well established. I was able to work with Shelley over a few months. So Shelley retired in December, January. She worked with me over the first quarter to really help transition the work of the organization and transition lots of relationships. So that I was able to hit the ground running, as you noted. I'm new to gaming and gambling, so there's lots to learn. And I'm definitely still in a learning space kind of 5 to 6 months later.
Yeah, what attracted this gig? I mean, just on a personal note, I'm a big fan of Rick Hansen. I think he's a true Canadian hero, and I just wonder what attracted you to take a run at getting this job and ultimately landing it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a new challenge for me. So personally, to be able to learn a new industry and to have a new challenge was something that worked for me quite well at this point. I had been with the Rick Hansen Foundation for 10 years. And so I remain very committed to the impact that they've made in accessibility and inclusion. And it's true, Rick really is an unbelievable Canadian icon. And it was wonderful to work for him. That I was wanting to do something new.
Elaine, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you were doing Sarah's performance review after 6 months, what kind of a grade would you give her so far?
You know what? Sarah's been a wonderful addition to the team. I think everybody is excited to have her on board. It's always great to have somebody coming in with a fresh perspective. Like she said, she's new to the gaming and gambling industry, and so she's asking a lot of really great questions, and we're having really smart, productive conversations at the organization. I think it's been fantastic that she's able to come in and be meeting with stakeholders and bringing all of these insights and her experience from another industry, another sector. So she's A+ so far, and
Very kind.
yeah,
I think she's bucking for another promotion, Sarah.
exactly. A+ so far, and I'm looking for a company car.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. We will make that happen. Yeah.
Well, I'll expect the commission on that when it happens, Elaine. We both talked about hitting the ground running, and I just wonder kind of what's at the top of your priority list or what's at the top of your to-do list right now heading into the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. So the council is very committed to its strategic plan. Just in advance to me starting, the strategic plan was established for 5 years. We are a year and a half or so into that plan, and we're really looking forward to a lot of the initiatives over the next 3 years. This year, we're really focused on looking at innovations within each of the strategic initiatives. So our first strategic initiative is in regards to prevention, is some of the prevention work that we're doing, and that is also with the funding that we have for the Responsible Internet Gambling Fund here in Ontario. Our second strategic imperative really involves some of our programs that we're able to offer to industry. We think about RG Check, some of the research and advisory services that we offer, and those initiatives. And then our third strategic imperative is about organizational capacity and organizational sustainability. So as we look forward, we want to use that as our platform platform to be able to build and move forward with initiatives in that space. So I'll let Elaine speak a little bit to some of the prevention work that we're doing, and then I can touch a little bit on RGC.
Sure.
So, I mean, we get funded by the Ministry of Health. We are very fortunate. I think Ontario is fortunate that there is such an investment into prevention and supporting Ontarians when it comes to gambling information and education and resources. So our team has been busy building on the RIGF the last year. Great learnings. One of the things that we have been doing, and that's kind of we're applying to kind of the future work, is our work with youth and young adults. We know that youth and young adults are at a higher risk, and so we are working to make sure that those strategies are doing what they need to in terms of delivering impact with that high-risk population, having important conversations with different community stakeholders, the post-secondary institutions, the high schools. So really, really focusing our efforts in that area, along with partnerships with some of the sports leagues, the broadcasters, in delivering our PSA. So continuing to build on that work there with our Ministry of Health prevention programming, and then the ethnocultural space. So we have our community outreach team is busy developing programs that are specific to some of these higher risk populations like Chinese, the Black Caribbean community, and Indigenous and South Asian populations. So yeah, a lot of work being done in prevention there, and a lot more to do.
Elaine, we're on the first day of the Canadian Gaming Summit, and on Wednesday, and one of the first panels I listened to this morning were Paul Burns and Dallas McCready from Atlantic Lottery, both talking about the need for gambling literacy in the education program. And I just wondered, do you have any specifics on, like, are you finding that school boards are receptive to what you want to do? And I couldn't agree more. We had Craig Cornforth from Epic Global Solutions on the podcast recently, and we talked about, he talked about his 14-year-old son. I relayed the story of a friend of mine who has a son who's betting online at 14 years old. And I just wondered what kind of traction RGC is making inside the education system.
You know what? That's a great question. There is definitely, I would say now more than ever, there's more of an appetite by the schools, the school boards, the mental health advisors on schools, the guidance counselors, to be educated on what's happening because they're seeing it with their students. They're wanting to work with us. We're developing training solutions and educational products that we can help build capacity there. It's rampant. You are seeing this in the schools. We've been having conversations with the OPP. They're seeing a lot of underage gambling. A side note is my son is in high school. He's in grade 9, and his baseball team group chat. The older kids are sharing their wins and their bets, and this is these are high school kids, and so there is definitely an interest and a need to be able to do more of this education in the schools. We're hearing it from the schools, and we're building the resources in the schools and working with them so that they can that they have that information.
Sarah, I just wonder, you talk about the steep learning curve and that. Have there been a few things that cause your eyebrows to raise, like when you talk about youth gambling, for example? Is there anything that's really struck you with those learnings that you've had so far?
Oh, it's interesting. So over the last few months, I've had the opportunity to learn a lot in regards to some of this youth engagement. And I didn't know about, for example, the evidence in reference to loot boxes and skins and how that's happening, and how teenagers, it looks like, in grade 10, grade 11, are really being exposed to those activities, and then how that leads into the journey. So I think that the evidence is quite clear there, and RGC wants to participate in ensuring that we have more supports for youth and young adults.
I'm going to start with you, Elaine, on this question. And Paul Burns again mentioned it this morning about the phrasing these days, and responsible gaming, responsible gambling, player protection, safe play, and I've talked about this on a podcast many times, including with you and Shelley in the past. Is that it's almost like there's this organization, all these alphabet organizations around responsible gambling.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, like, where does RGC kind of fit into that puzzle? And has there been an evolution with Ontario now being 3 years old and, working with the regulators, working with operators, working with suppliers? where does kind of RGC fit into that puzzle?
We're at the center of it. When you think about, we're one of the only organizations out there, I think, that is, our whole philosophy is about the need to collaborate and work with all the cross-sectoral partners. We are, when it comes to gambling, we're gambling neutral. And so our belief is that in order to make sure that there are safeguards in place, and we are making sure that there are platform safeguards, the consumer safeguards in place. And in order to do that, you can't do it in a vacuum. You have to be doing it with the operators, regulators, the government, community agencies, the treatment providers. We all have to be working on these solutions together. And when you think about it, and very much in this sector, you have industry, you have operators, you have the gaming manufacturers, you have the treatment providers. Everybody is focused in their pillar, in their area, and as they should be. But RGC is a great connector. And you see that with our Discovery Conference and how we bring everybody together. And I think that's where you see these meaningful conversations happening, because there is that healthy, productive tension, right? And honestly, I think that's where RGC really thrives, is being able to have those connections with everybody, because we don't lean in any one direction.
Want to just further that, Sarah. I was just riding up the elevator with Brian McCarthy from BCLC, and he was talking that he's meeting with you after you record this podcast. And obviously, you're having lots of conversations with different stakeholders across the industry. Is there a common theme to those conversations, or how are you using those conversations? But again, as you kind of learn the industries.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is this is such an interesting industry because there's so many different approaches depending on what jurisdiction you're in. And so coming from outside of the space and getting a better understanding of all of those different approaches, as we know in BC, just the legislation is extremely different than it is in Ontario, and the way that approach is done is quite different all the way across the country. And then internationally, because RGC works internationally quite extensively, every country has a different approach, and then of course in the US, every state has a different approach. And so I've been really trying to learn more and more about each of those differences and what is shared. And I do think that what is shared is, in general, a commitment to player health, to player protections, a commitment to responsible gambling. And so, as Elaine said, I think that really allows us to be able to position ourselves in a space that says we want to be able to take the evidence and provide that to each of the stakeholders to support the and if we can navigate that while working with all of the stakeholders.
I want to talk for a few minutes with the two of you about the Discovery Conference that took place back in May. And again, your first Discovery Conference, Sarah, and I just wonder what would be some of the key takeaways you would have from your first experience?
Yeah, so and I'm going to pick up again on that piece around Discovery is the only event or space that allows for those sometimes complicated conversations to happen, where we're talking about responsible gambling, but we want to be able to bring together lots of different stakeholders with potentially lots of different goals. And so how do we discuss them? How do we challenge it? How do we move forward? How do we forge a path forward to be able to make that happen? This year's Discovery was really powerful in that the team really worked to have more voices of experience in the conference, and so I really enjoyed being able to be part of that. And what a committed and collaborative group that's.
And Elaine, for you as someone who's a Discovery veteran, and again, you attend so many of these conferences, and sometimes people get a little bit conference fatigue, and it's the same topics over and over again. And what else can they say about Canada? What new can they say about Ontario? I guess just from your standpoint, what made this particular Discovery Conference a little bit unique? Maybe it goes back to that, the voices that you have.
For sure. I think the integration of lived experience kind of more deeply into the content really stood out. And we've heard that from delegates, that it really anchored everybody back to why we do what we do. And so really pleased with how that worked and how that really supported the message and amplified the message. The other piece that I thought this year, which was really great, one of the things that the team did was for some of the top tier sponsors, we provided them with community passes. So we gave them extra passes to provide to community partners. So we saw more community partners this year than we have ever at Discovery. So post-secondaries, community agencies, different agricultural groups coming to the conference and sharing their experience and what they're seeing, learning, making connections, which is so important. And so that was really exceptional to see because it changed a lot of the conversation. And I'd also say that with Discovery this year, you know what, it was, we always strive to have, even though it's in Ontario, representation from across Canada with our speakers, but also internationally. So we had a number of speakers that were from outside of Canada, which is really, really important because for many of the attendees that are coming from Ontario or are coming from Canada, they want to hear about what's happening in the rest of the world, right? So this is our opportunity to bring some of that expertise and insight from outside of our, outside of our hometown into the conference to be able to elevate everybody's dialogue and thinking.
I just wonder, Sarah, was it kind of a, again, this was discussed in the panel this morning. Canada's got a sterling reputation in the area of responsible gambling, and I just wondered how aware of that were you going through the process of getting hired by RGC, and how neat is it when you mention RGC check? That's not a foreign expression beyond North American borders, and is that something that you were aware of when you took this job?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the truth is that I learned a lot during the so that's it. So and I do think something that I have learned coming into this space that I wasn't aware of previously is the need for there to be more discussion about what's happening in this space outside of this space. So I'm not sure how much the rest of the general public in Canada is aware of the work that is happening here, and I found that very interesting to learn more about. On the certification accreditation approach, though, what I did do previously at the Rick Hansen Foundation is build a certification. So it was for pre-construction for large infrastructure, and we worked with the industry to be able to integrate a program into their goals so that it appealed to their business purposes, but that also really had some major benefits to the community. So I really believe in that ability to work with industry to be able to do projects. And again, that comes back to that concept of having everybody at the table. How do we support this work to be able to improve it? And that there is, of course, social benefits associated with that, but that is beneficial to everyone.
Elaine, I want to ask you, both you and Tracy Parker represented RGC in Kanaskas or Calgary, I guess, last weekend, and some panel discussions on responsible gaming and gambling policy. Again, I just wonder how that all came about, and then just RGC's involvement in that summit and what just your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so it was a great experience. Both Tracy and I attended on behalf of RGC. RGC is on the steering committee for the Global Forum on with responsible gambling and kind of what those next steps are in terms of developing a framework. It was really interesting to see the level of, I think this started getting planned maybe 2 months ago. And just the commitment there, there were approximately 80 people from around the world, a lot of North American, but also representation from other markets. And just the commitment, the shared commitment to want to see an alignment on what is the right framework to be putting in place, and what do we, how can we collectively learn from each other, and what are the stakes that we want to put in the ground. So a lot of work to come, but I think there is a shared interest and passion in wanting to see this become something meaningful.
And there is follow-up, right? Like my understanding,
yes.
there's going to be a couple more of these
so
gatherings.
There is a steering committee with the goal to develop a framework, guidelines, whatever that might take form, whatever that might look like, with the goal to then take that further to the UN and bring this to the global stage in terms of how do we involve all of the jurisdictions in electing this. So, but a lot more to come on that.
Sarah, you made a great point about the message. There's obviously a message that resonates quite loudly within the industry. And I think that's the one thing. We have Amanda Brewer was on the podcast this week, and we talked about this summit in particular being a great opportunity for people who don't usually follow the gaming industry, whether that's a journalist or maybe a potential stakeholder or a stakeholder on the periphery, to come and listen to these panels and have conversations with people like you and Elaine. I just wonder how you get that message beyond a convention center room over 2 days of a summit. And again, Elaine talked about the partnership that RGC has with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. But how do you get that broader message out about not only the work that the council is doing, but also, I think there's still a lack of education in this industry about what's an illegal operator and what's a legal operator. And there's the gray market now, as somebody put it this morning, I think it was Lindsay Slater from GeoComply, the gray market is several shades of gray now. So, how do you get your message and the industry message around responsible gambling out to that broader population?
Interesting question. And so RGC, of course, has done some excellent public campaigns to engage on the need to educate the public on responsible gambling and on understanding how gambling works. There's no question, though, that there is potential for us to figure out how to make that big. How do we take some of these made in Ontario solutions and make them national, make them international, expand the conversation, and be able to use them to provide that education? I think this G7 discussion is an example of a way that we can have a strong voice with a larger group of leaders, and I know that lots of our discussions with some of the other provinces will support some of that. So I think there is room for that. It's one of the things that you mentioned about the framework that Elaine and I have having a recent discussion about is that idea of how we talk about what is the framework. What does that mean? What are the player protections that are provided within it? What are player protections that are provided outside of that? And really having an understanding of where RGC's role is in educating the public on that.
Elaine, as a former marketing chief, I better get a quick thought from you on this too.
Sarah's completely right. I think RGC we are fortunate that we have our public education campaigns. We can go out and educate the public on the risks. How do we support them? How do they know? We don't go out with broad campaigns around, what is a regulated site and the importance, but it is part of our communications and it is out there. I think when we think about RGC's role in driving the industry forward and our opportunities there, I think there's a lot that we could build on. Our team is, we work internationally. Our team is present at a lot of the conferences, presenting on our work and sharing our work. So it's a lot of grassroots and kind of word of mouth when it comes to us being able to push forward kind of what our position is, what are our recommendations. But I think, like Sarah said, there is an opportunity for us to be able to elevate that, and that's something that we'll be looking at going.
Just two more questions. Again, you can flip a coin on who wants to answer this one, but we can never do a podcast and not ask about Alberta. And just a real simple question, is how involved, if at all, is RGC in discussions around what's coming to Alberta?
So we've had lots of discussions previous to when I started, and then now this year. with the government of Alberta in regards to what their plans are. We have appreciated those discussions in that they have indicated a strong commitment to responsible gambling, and that is what they want to be able to integrate into their work. We really are supporting the use of RG Check in order to be able to provide that standard for player protection within Alberta, and we are really excited also to be able to talk to them about some of the preventive awareness campaigns and the work that they're going to be doing there.
And Sarah's headed to Stampede. We're going to get her a cowboy
Oh,
hat.
that's
And so
And flipping pancakes and
Exactly. That's right. Exactly.
And so so she'll be there meeting with folks.
Soon, very soon or something. Yeah, it's very good.
Elaine, is there a role for RGC to also play in the conversations this week? Also talk about expanding beyond Ontario and Alberta. Like, is there a role?
Definitely. Yes, we work with everybody, and so we develop bespoke programs and a strategy here for Ontario because that's where we're funded right now. But we have these programs that we are also able to bring outside Ontario that we've done in the past. So our youth program, for example, has been running in Cyprus for the last 4 years. We've worked with Atlantic Canada on supporting their prevention programs. RG Check operates internationally. So yeah, we work with everybody and develop programs specific to meet the needs of their own populations.
It's in 15 jurisdictions internationally that RG Check operates in right now. So, yeah.
Last question for the boss, new boss, Sarah. Just what does the summer look like for you? Like, is there still a learning curve period? Are you at a place now where you feel like now you can start to carry out what you would like your mandate to be? How do you see the next 3 to 4 months look like?
Yeah. So I think I am transitioning into a space at which I have my arms around what I know and what I don't know. So I'm still aware of what I don't know. And the truth is that I run into that fairly regularly, and then I have to rely on my team. But I'm quite lucky in that the RGC team is excellent. I mean, clearly, with the way here today, Tracy Parker, as you mentioned, is excellent. And RGC has 150 staff. So we have 100 people who are working in the PlaySmart Centres, doing work here in Ontario, and then another 50 who really provide that thought leadership nationally and internationally. So I'm lucky in that I get to learn and do at the same time because of that excellent team. So this summer we are really excited. We have a retreat set for our executive management team to be able to really have in-depth discussions on how we want to transition some of those innovations into action. We'll be talking about the Responsible Internet Gambling Fund and exactly which of the educational programs we want to go deep on for next year. We'll also be talking about RG Check. We've had lots of really interesting feedback about the potential for us to integrate some in-base components into RG Check. And then the other big initiative for us is in regards to evaluation. So we're just in the final hiring stage of hiring a new associate director of evaluation. And we'll be looking at theories of change and logic models across the organization within RGC and then also within each of the programs, and how that feeds up and goes into how we deliver our mission. So how we look at the organization as a whole within market and delivery.
You want the last word, Lynn, or would you defer to the?
I defer to the boss.
Oh, that's very nice.
That's a good place to leave. That's a great place to leave it. Sarah McCarthy's the newish CEO of Responsible Gambling Council. Elaine MacDougall, the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Programs. Elaine, thanks as always for coming on the show.
Thank you, Steve.
And Sarah, great to meet you in person. And listen, let's do this again in the fall once you get through your summer and you get through your retreat. And as Elaine, we often talk about this industry is a fast-moving train, and I'm sure we'll have lots of new things to talk about come fall.
Everything might be new.
It will likely be new.
Exactly.
That's it for this episode of the Gaming News Canada Show. As always, you can find us on Substack at gamingnewscanada.ca and also on the various podcast platforms. And you can also watch this episode and all the episodes of the Gaming News Canada Show on our YouTube channel. Thanks so much again to Sarah McCarthy and Elaine MacDougall for joining us today. And we will see everybody again very soon.